Ciara Pressler. This is Pregame, and this is our live virtual show where we interview some of my favorite creators, innovators, and game changers. And today I am very excited to welcome my friend, former client, amazing Renaissance woman, the modern 21st century Renaissance that is happening, Chasten Harmon.
Thanks for having me. Happy Friday.
Of course, such a pleasure and perfect timing. Where are you zooming in from today?
I'm still in sunny Los Angeles. It's a little overcast this morning, but the sun's starting to peek out, and the weather's kind of been the thing keeping me hanging on. So happy to be reporting from Los
Yes.
Angeles.
And who's your assistant right there behind you?
I have my little assistant Vixen here. She's just manning the yarn.
Oh, wow, you've got all your work. Okay, I mean, just this picture is a perfect illustration of your life. You've got yarn, you've got the piano right behind you. Where do we even begin? So let's start with Plush Armour, your business. Tell us about it.
Yes. So, Plush Armour kind of started as a side hustle for me during my kind of like the peak development of my acting career. I kind of took up knitting backstage when I was performing theater. It was like the thing that got me through tour. And every new store we would go, every new city we would go to, I would go visit the yarn store and I would be collecting all this yarn. And so, of course, like when you're doing shows every day, like that's a lot of knitting. Like I just ended up with a lot of items.
Wait, so can we just pause here already to talk about this amazingness? Because Chasten was on the 25th anniversary national Broadway tour of Les Mis, okay? Yeah. And, you know, this is a huge, like career-making role. And you were running your business Space on White, an artist, rehearsal and performance space in Tribeca, New York, from the road. And I was doing the marketing at the time. And you were like, I'll just start knitting in the, between my, power ballad performances.
Right. Yeah, like I played Eponine, so like I die at the beginning of the second act, and then I have the whole rest of that act to knit. Come back for a bit at the end, sing a song, we're done.
So you're saying heaven is knitting, basically. That's
yeah,
the afterlife.
it was a lot though. It was. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I don't know where I found the time to knit, but it was what soothed me. And then, so ultimately, I decided to leave tour and go back to grad school so I could shift more into the film and TV arena. And so I got to grad school with like all these scarves because I had been knitting so much on tour. And once I got there, people were like, "Oh, these are really cool." And every once in a while, people would ask me if they could buy one, if I could make them one. And I was like, you know what? Like, let me just throw these up in an Etsy shop and see if they sell. So I threw a few up and they started to sell and get some traction. So I was like, okay, I'll do a little Etsy shop. But my conundrum was like, I'm in grad school, I'm still running Space on White, like I don't have a lot of time, like I'm not trying to turn into a 24-hour handmade knitting, like that's not what I want my life to be. So I was really okay with just keeping it like a hobby with benefits. So that's what it was. Like every year it brought me in a little extra income. It was something that I enjoyed doing. It was, my hobby with benefits. And as time went on, I still work with Etsy and have my main platform through Etsy because they have been very supportive since like the inception of my shop. They're very, very good about supporting artists of color and their shops run by people of color. And that's why I've enjoyed working with them so much because they've given me so much free press, interviews, blogs, editorial features. So they've sent a lot of business my way, which has been great. So I've been really happy. Like I never really felt the need to kind of build my own site or do my own thing. So I was just kind of rolling with that. This is my side hustle. Acting is my main thing. That's what I'm doing. And I feel like I did an interview with you, Ciara, around that time where it's like, you just do so many things. I'm like, yeah, because I do one thing. And then I'm like, what else could I do?
Well, and to not bury the lead, like this is the number one thing I get from you, you know, your inspiration to me, and I hope to everyone else as they meet you today, is you you just lack self-doubt and you just live in possibility. And you know, when you were, for example, you were thinking of going to grad school, and I was kind of like, why would you do that? You've already been on Broadway. Like, you have a career, like you have a performing career, like one of the hardest careers to have. And then you're like, well, yeah, but I could, you know, I'm curious to see. You're always challenging yourself to
I
go
know,
further. You live with
right?
no limits. Yeah,
That
I love it.
that advice, like that's the advice that I give people right now. Like, no, don't go to grad school. You already have a career. You don't need it. Um, but you know, at the time, like I was really interested in that, in that specific type of learning environment. So I did like it's just been like a continual pivoting. Because I think on your career path, I think it's so trial and error. Like you can think that something might be your jam in your mind, but until you actually get inside of it and do it and try it on, you don't know. You don't know if it's something that your audience finds value in. You don't know if it's something that your body finds sustainable. You have to trial and error. So like I'm an artist, I'm a performer, I'm always going to be. I love the medium of musical theater, but the inkling I had then was like, I love this, but I don't like that it doesn't allow me time for my other passions. Like the schedule is brutal. So I was like, if I want to be the full Renaissance woman that I am, I can't have this be my primary career. I need to be able to support myself in other ways. So I shifted to film and TV because it allows me to work 3 to 4 months out of the year and then spend the rest of the year investing in my other interests, which is my knitwear. And then as of recent, at the beginning of 2020, I decided to expand the knitwear line into a whole wellness brand. And that came from my own evolution too. In my time at Yale, I found myself attracted to the classes that were based in movement, based in body forms, Alexander technique, Grotowski, lucid body. Like those were the classes that really got me excited. And even after school, those were the classes that I still want to study with these teachers. So my body is kind of telling me like, this is where you want to go. This is what you're interested in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm going to study with these teachers. And I didn't know what route it was taking until I started teaching in Los Angeles at an acting studio. I was teaching for the first 2 years that I was here, and it was such a beautiful experience to be in space with bodies and teach that physical somatic work with actors. And I realized I love this. I love working with actors. I also want to help people do this work in their lives. Because I feel that our culture is a very head dominated culture. And as a result, a lot of us are really disconnected from our bodies. So the expansion into the wellness brand was to continue my studies in being an embodiment specialist and to offer embodiment workshops for the community, specifically the Black, Indigenous, POC community, because we've got a lot of healing that we need to do. And I think through movement is the fastest way. I think talk therapy is amazing. And if you have access to it, you should definitely engage. But there's just a healing that happens through movement that we rarely get to experience because we just go through the same cycle: sit, stand, lay, sit, stand, lay, sit, stand, lay. So as I was following my impulses and listening to where my body wanted to go, that kind of formulated the foundation of what the business was. So I just let it take its natural shape as opposed to trying to force it into, like, it's okay if I do embodiment sessions and make knitwear and sell ice cream and deliver plants to my neighbors. Like, that can be my business. It can be all of those things without an explanation. And that's what I've been really trying to embrace this year, that every person's business is going to be unique and individual and need to be structured depending on who they are and how their workflow flows. And so I've just been responding. I've just been responding to the stimuli around me and saying, ooh, I like this. Okay, a little more of this, a little less of this. And it's just kind of manifested into this whole new thing, which I'm engaged in. And I'm tickled. I'm delighted on the journey because it's a combination of all of my favorite things.
There's an Andy Warhol quote about business being the best art, good business, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the part of my artist life, having started out in the theater as well, you know, that I bring forward into business. Like, I am endlessly fascinated with that iteration of, like, how can we tweak this and make that better and make it more responsive to the audience and incorporate audience feedback the way we do in live theater. So, you know, I feature you in my first book, Exit Stage Right, about in the chapter about performers who also do another job as well, not necessarily for money, because you were an equity actor, you were making union pay on your jobs, and SAG as well, I'm sure, but you know, for your mental health, you know, to have a career that you're in control of a little bit more than performing, where you're asking for the role so often.
Yeah, it's an industry that really provides no opportunity for a sense of, like, stability.
Yeah.
Or even, you know, like, financial worth. Like, it's something that you really have to manifest on your own and hold strong to, because you're never going to get that external validation that, like, here's a contract that tells you what I think that you're worth for the year, and then it just keeps going up from here. Like, it just doesn't work like that. Like, you can make a ton of money one year and then not work for 3 years and then make a ton of money 2 years after that, and that is considered a successful career.
Yeah.
And so what I tell so many artists is you have to figure out how to make the in-between enjoyable. If your only state of being is waiting for those opportunities to come down the line, you're going to drive yourself insane.
How is it in the industry right now? I mean, it's ground to a halt in Los Angeles with filming, so it's good that you have something else to do, because I'm sure the people who are only acting or otherwise creative in film and television are going knocking off the walls, you know.
Yeah, when artists can't art, it gets tense.
Yeah.
Yeah, the industry is shut down. I was really grateful for this time because I had begun developing this expansion in October of last year, and I just needed time to focus on it. But I had also booked a really exciting acting job at the same time. It all happens always at the same time, always. So it's like, I have this thing, it's ready to launch, but I have to be over here doing this, and, like, finally I got a chance to be like, okay, I can just sit down and work on this, which is great. But if I didn't have it, I don't know. I really don't know. I probably would not be here and in a state where I am able to have a conversation. I'd be out of my mind, I'm sure, because I've been channeling all of my anxiety into creation.
Well, which is a great way to do it, and I'm sure we're going to see an amazing chapter of American art because of all the tragedy we're experiencing. Unfortunately, that's what it takes sometimes, but this is laying some fertile soil for art, both because of COVID and the creativity that it's forcing, but also because of the current chapter of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
You published an ebook recently about healing. Can you talk about that? There's a download on your website.
Oh, the Black Woman's Guide to the Revolution. Yeah, so that that was my offering to the community because I find that like I need consistent uplifting, consistent support. So I compiled this document of like, here are all of my go-to influencers and thought leaders and people who inspire me and keep my mental health on point, keep my spiritual health on point, and are always offering like free, soothing, healing services. So it was a compilation of all of those things because the narrative of my brand is like this beautiful world is all of the things. It's always going to be all of the things. So let's arm ourselves. You know, we have to arm ourselves plushly. We have to be smart about how we arm ourselves. We arm ourselves with these support systems. We arm ourselves with social media feeds that give us life as opposed to bring us down. We arm ourselves with those people that we know on the short list that we can call if we need that pickup, if we need that pep talk. Arm ourselves with, I know, the self-care that we need to operate at our fullest. Arm ourselves with the mentors that we have to guide us along the way. We need all of that, and we need it all of the time. Like there's so much resistance, and there's going to be only more. Like, white supremacy and capitalism does not die quietly. Like, it's going to scream and kick. It's supposed to. That's what happens when you stick a knife in an animal. And so we have to be ready for that. We have to be ready to walk into it knowing that we have the tools that we need to navigate it, and we do, and we can. So that's what that document was for, to be like, here are all the things that keep me soft and feeling armed and ready in this world. And I'm a firm believer that there cannot be enough of everything, because just because something speaks to me doesn't mean it speaks to everyone. So like, here's as much as possible. Take what works for you, leave what doesn't.
I
Um,
love this model you're talking about of, arming your spirit and arming your soul for this war, but using these very dramatic and violent metaphors to talk about creating peace.
right.
And it's really beautiful. I don't think that, you know, that white people, certainly not white males, understand the emotional taxation and the re-traumatization that happens from even just observing these events, these videos we've had to see, this racism that is kicking and screaming right now and fighting to survive in our country. I think as women, we've all experienced it, in the framework of sexism and male supremacy. But just trying to continue living life, trying to continue doing business, trying to continue taking care of yourself with all these things swirling around, it does take a massive amount of effort, self-awareness, self-care to navigate.
Yeah, more than usual, more than usual. And there's no shame around it. It is what it is. Like, I feel like I have to do something 3 times a day to just ground myself. It's not like a full on, not like doing yoga 3 times a day. We don't have time for that. But like, just a 5 minute stretch, shake out, put on a song, dance it out. A
Yeah.
5 minute, I'm going to sit with my breath, or like find a stream of water sound to soothe me. Because you get really in it when you're working, and then all of a sudden you start to feel tension creep up in certain spots that you're holding that you're not aware of, and it's just good to just kind of like shake the body out a few times a day, just like a dog or a cat does every
Yes.
single time they get up. Like, that's what the body's meant to do. I'm up now, okay, like, let me get myself ready to move.
Yeah.
um, Now I've lost track of.
No, I do that. I've learned that from my pet bunny, right? Like, he always shakes his ears out, and when he does that, I try to remember to just shake and loosen that whatever's I'm holding in my body, because I am absolutely like part of that capitalist system that creates this guilt if I'm not productive every waking moment,
Exactly.
let alone sleep, you know. And so to take those little breaks, which of course make everything better, which of course improve my life and the life of those I touch, I just, 5 minutes to stretch. I couldn't possibly do that. I should be, achieving something. How do
Yeah.
you, how do you manage that?
I think it's funny that like I've never found that I takes longer to do things when I slow down. It doesn't take any longer. It's just that I enjoy the process of doing it more because I slowed down. I've actually kind of let go of multitasking
Yeah.
altogether. I mean, I've got lots of plates spinning, but I will only focus on legit one thing at a time because it's just more fun that way. I've had to work really hard to take the pressure off of myself to produce. Like you deserve your rest. Like your natural state is to generate, so you have to work harder to tell yourself to rest. Everyone's different, so we all have to learn who we are and like what kind of coaching we need to give ourselves. But when you're navigating so much all at the same time, and we all are right now, we're grieving so many layers of things. The pressure to perform is the first thing that can, when we're here and we have the space for it, we're in it. When we need to stop and take that breath, we deserve to stop and take that breath, and it's only going to enhance the work moving forward.
I want to ask you, and I think I've always wanted to ask you, so many of your attitudes about life and creativity and art, did they start in your household? I know your mom and I know your sister. Your mother is just incredible. She's always traveling and doing things and taking on crazy projects. And like, I'm like, where's your mom right now? And you're like, oh, she's in Africa, like starting a something or this. And then your sister is also a Broadway actor. Although
Yeah.
I've never heard anything even related to competitiveness between you two. I think your sister was just in the San Francisco company of Hamilton until they had to stop performing, and she's an amazing talent as well. And I've seen you sing together, and there's definitely a Beyonce, Solange, Miss Tina thing going on here. But how did your household growing up, family dynamic, maybe lend to your perspectives on creativity?
Yeah, my family's always, it was brought to my attention very early on in my talk therapy that like, okay, so your family's kind of like always achieving things, so like you're naturally going to be like a workaholic overachiever. And I'm like, actually you're right, they are always doing big things. Like it's really easy to feel pressure to, just because my dad has a huge like $1 million company, that like I have to, that my company has to be comparable to that, like that it's not okay for my business to be a small handmade business, or where I just offer services or workshops within the capacity that I feel like I want to operate in. Like that's okay. um, but watching them do what they do and just follow whatever passion or dream or idea that they have is one of the things that I think has given me so much permission, because they never have questioned anything that even from a young age, where I was like, I think I want to do this. And they'd be like, okay. I'd be like, can we go to the radio station so I can audition for the Mickey Mouse Club? And they're just like, okay. Like there was never like, do you think that's really a good idea? Maybe we shouldn't do that. They just said yes to everything. So I kind of landed in New York City with the audacity to think that I could too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I notice a different mentality for my fellow actors and fellow classmates and fellow artists whose parents have spent a lot of time encouraging them. Well, maybe you should, do this as a minor and have this as a major, just so you can have a backup plan. Or it really does seep into the psyche. And you spend a lot of time second guessing, should I really be doing this, or would it be smarter to do something else? And that time is only time that you're spending negotiating with your intuition, and your intuition is a feeling that you've already discovered and know to be true. So why are you negotiating with it?
I love that. Don't negotiate with your intuition. Yeah, that's something I really observed right away in New York is people whose parents had been in the arts, they just it took off a layer of like whether you're allowed to be an artist, very helpful. Um, and also the kids who had started at NYU had this massive leg up on the rest of us who came right out of college because they were already familiar with and comfortable with the city and felt like they deserved to be there, which you went to NYU Tisch School of the Arts. And all my friends who went to Tisch, there was a comfort with navigating the city and talking to people in the industry. There was much less of an imposter syndrome about just being in New York.
Yeah, I was like pounding auditions on the day that I graduated.
Yeah.
I was like literally like sitting there with sides, like, is this over yet? I gotta go. That's like very NYU vibes.
Yes, totally. But I wonder, I always think it's cool, and I'm sure it's been cool for you to like watch where your classmates have ended up, and then, doing grad school, at the Yale School of Acting, which if you all don't know is the top program. Okay, it's not like she just was like, oh, I'm gonna get my MFA. No, she went to Yale. It's the top program, and that's where a lot of our heroes have gone as well, and to be able to study the craft there. And I think also, with the attitude of like, I'm here to explore and not as a means to an end of like, I want to land this project or win this award or something, but like, this is the next step in my evolution as an artist. To go through it with that attitude, I'm sure was very rewarding.
Yeah, it was. My time at Yale was interesting because it was actually the first time that I was very aware of being female and very aware of being an African American female. And I think it was just that very like rigid institutional environment. And not the drama school, of course, but everything around it is, it's Yale University. So it ignited a lot of fire and a lot of passion in me, my time there. There were things that I were really frustrated by, and at first it made me angry, and then I was like, you know what, like this is just a microcosm of what the real world is actually like. So this is actually a blessing because it's preparing me to navigate that. It's preparing me it's giving me an opportunity to practice using my voice to self-advocate. And luckily they were teaching me how to use my voice and speech to do it. So they got it. Drama school. They're teaching your actors how to speak up for themselves. Well, then they do. They come into your office and they do. But it was kind of the starting point of my desire to go further into activism and liberating, marginalized communities in any personally, professionally. And I think one of the most exciting things right now is the decolonizing that's happening all around. And what's the most exciting thing that's happening in business is that we're seeing the decolonization of the marketplace. Wow. And we're giving ourselves permission to show up in the ways that we want to show up, not in the ways that we've been told. This is the only way that you can do business. This is the only way that you can engage with your clients. This is the only way that you can pitch a sale or get a sale. There isn't one way. Like innovators are innovative because they have the audacity to dream. That's literally what evolution is. The audacity to dream. So why can't I have the audacity to say, I want to do this, I want to try it, and for it to be perfectly okay if it fails, no matter how much money you spend. How many white men are like getting their family's trust fund money to play with. Oh, I think I'll try starting this company. I think I'll try starting this company. Think of all that money that gets tossed around and lost because they have the right to play and experiment and try and fail and try again. Whereas we're not only putting pressure on ourselves too, but society is putting pressure on us to get it right the first time. And
Wow.
and business has proven that that's not how it works. You try something, it works or it doesn't work, and then you try a new rendition, and then you try a new rendition, and you try a new rendition, and then like 10 years later, boom, Macy's or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and that's something you and I talked about a lot because I had the honor of doing your communications when you decided to close Space on White, your artist space.
Yeah.
And I think there's something very mature and wise about knowing when you're finished with a project. Like, things don't have to be designed to be permanent. And I'm curious, you know, because a lot of your work has been about holding space, creating community, giving artists and other creators tools to go inward so that they can create outward. What are some of the lessons that you've learned in being in leadership in that way? Because I know a lot of people on this call are also creating their own communities, are also supporting artists, are trying to encourage people to do art and do self-awareness as a path.
Yeah. The biggest lessons that I've learned is listening is so important. Listening. It's more important than planning, actually, because plans are all hypothetical. But once you start to get to the execution phase, the muscle that you need is that listening muscle to see how it's responding. Not just how your audience is responding to it, but how your body is responding to it. Because it's telling you too, like, this might not be sustainable if you want me to like do this every week. I might not be able to do that long term. Um, but I think a big trap that entrepreneurs get themselves in is thinking they have to have it all figured out before they start. And that's not how the process works. The process works figuring it out as you go. You have to start somewhere, and then you get your feedback from yourself and from your audience to figure out how to continue to tailor it, to find that sweet spot where both parties feel nourished and fulfilled and like it is a symbiotic relationship.
How do you define success in your projects if it's not just achieving or doing the exact plan you thought of when you started?
My relationship with success is so like someone asked me to do an interview in my hometown about success, and it was like, I don't know if you want me to do this interview because I actually don't subscribe to success. So if you're willing to talk about that, then maybe, but it's not going to be what you think it is. And I've had to like redefine my relationship with success, and one of the things that has helped me to do that is getting really clear about what my core values are. Um, there's a man I follow, Scott Jeffrey or Joffrey. I'll have to look his name and I'll put it in the chat. He's a CEO sage, and he gives wisdom around like, here's how you show up to your business authentically and how you build authentic relationships with yourself and with your clients. And I love him, and he had this workbook of like figuring out what your core values are. And once I figured out what my core values are, all of the pressure to perform and succeed fell away because I was like, these are the things that I care about. So if I show up to anything that I do in a given day with those things in mind, then that is a successful day. If one of the things I value is authenticity, like as long as I show up to everything I do in the day authentically, I feel I can end that day with this feeling of a sense of pride. And like I served my purpose today because I did something that I felt that I was put here to do, no matter what scale it's on. It could be that my business had a successful day and a good day of visibility, or it could be someone in my community like just reached out and needed an ear, and like we got to have a heart to heart, and I had that personal private connection that the public will never know about. So listening is so important, and it's the quality of connection goes so much further than the quantity of connections.
I love that.
And if the quality is there, the quantity will take care of itself via a snowball effect. So just focus on what's right in front of you and putting everything that you have into that thing right in front of you, and then focus on the very next thing. We get so far ahead of ourselves. We can. And there's a time to pull out and look from that macro scale. There is a time. But to be present, we have to be in the moment of what's right in front of us. And pressure from decisions, for me, it comes from thinking like, why is this decision so hard to make? Because I'm thinking that I'm making this decision for like the end all be all of all time, and it's not. It's just a decision for right now. It's just what I need right now. I could change my mind. I could come back. We don't know what can happen in the future. We just know how to respond to what's in front of us. And as long as we do that authentically and stay in alignment with who we are, can't lose.
Thank you. This is so resonating with me. And you might have just answered my question with that last comment. But core values, when your core values aren't aligning with your clients' core values, how do you listen, take it in, deliver with integrity, and generate, value for both parties?
Yes. So everyone is where they are on their journey. And the thing that I found that all I can do is show by example, by how I live, by how I show up, by how I communicate, by how I conduct myself. That speaks way louder than preaching or like any perfect copy that you can write, to get someone's attention. Mm-hmm. And I think in regards to what you're talking about, the key element is like accepting that everyone's at a different place on the journey, and like there's still value in the exchange. And even if they're getting something, even if they're not getting out of it what you want them to be getting out of it, they're still getting something. You never know what they're getting. They could get a completely different thing. They could completely change their lives. But it's all about baby steps. It's all about baby steps. Or even if it's just like what do you do?
I work for an environmental nonprofit, but we interact with a lot of businesses. There's, enough said.
You do the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
You do the best you can. It's an uphill climb in the same way that like taking down white supremacy and capitalism is going to be an uphill climb. You know that every little bit of progress is progress.
Yeah.
And it helps. And even if you don't get through in the ways that you want to get through, I guarantee you something's landing and sticking and resonating that is going to create a path or trajectory towards a destination. The environment is the thing that I care about the most in this world. And so sometimes it can be really confusing to me when people choose to harm it. It's an emotionally taxing industry that you're in, but it's the most important work, and you just can't give up. You just can't give up. Thank you for it.
We have a question from Christy who owns Meta Juju. She wants to know, is there anything that you do every day, like habits for your business or for yourself?
Drink water, move my body. My work is all about the body, and like this is the vehicle we have. This is what carries us through this. So if we don't take care of it, then the foundation that we have is compromised. And the body was made to move. It needs to move. Sitting, standing, laying does not cut it. We were made to do so much more than that. We come from wanderers, gatherers, climbers, swingers, jumpers. It needs to move to release that energy. So I move my body every day in one way or the other, and I make sure to hydrate myself. Those are my staples.
One last question, because you've been able to launch and grow so many projects, when we're talking about the inner work and we're talking about relationships and what's in front of us, what does marketing mean to you right now? Because a lot of us are in the ramping up stage of like proving a concept or trying to get our businesses to a point where they provide an income. So on a real practical level, how do we translate this to marketing?
It's the same. It's trial and error. We have to reevaluate everything right now, especially branding and marketing. Branding is a term that was created to mark human beings as product. It has a naturally icky feeling around it. So it's okay to redefine what that looks like. And I think that creativity and artists' imaginations are a really great place to start in reimagining what marketing looks like. It's not this format that like the internet is selling you. It's not. It's what resonates with your audience. So lean into that. Do trial and error. Put out a bunch of different posts. See what content resonates with people the most. And start to lean into that content. Start to lean into that messaging. It's less about selling a product and more about identifying your audience's pain points and speaking to those.
What I hear you saying is moving away from brand and marketing as manipulation and moving into conversation.
Mm-hmm. Conversation. Ask, what do you need? How can we be here for you? Sit down and have coffee with people. They'll tell you what their pain points are. You'll be able to hear them and you'll be able to respond to them. And that's where that listening tool comes in. Listening is it's the key component of marketing, because marketing without that is just shoving things down people's throats and hoping that it resonates with them. And sometimes it might, but usually it's not the product. It's the person, it's the service, it's the energy that I'm drawn to and that people are drawn to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know when I've tried to market and sell with that desperation energy of trying to hit those numbers or like worrying about my expenses, which is natural, you know, it's we go through that as business owners, but you know, people can sense that energy and it's repellent. Mm-hmm. Versus the like invitation, the welcoming, the engaging, the like allowing people to be adults and decide whether this product or service is right for them. Respectful.
Yeah. And audience, they give feedback. All kinds, all the time.
What are you dreaming about right now? What might be next in your project landscape?
Ooh, we were talking about it. So next in my project landscape is I want to find land and I want to develop a horticultural healing retreat center that's focused around a movement space so we can do healing and embodiment workshops, and then is just surrounded by gardens so that we can reconnect with the land, because I think nature, for me, nature is the medicine. You know, it's the salve that will heal the world, getting bodies to reconnect with themselves and reconnect with nature.
Well, then the game plan for that is you got to come back up to Portland, because we win when it comes to natural spaces.
I know.
And of course, we'll have to have a pregame retreat on your property when you land it.
About it, I've had the thought in the past, I've had the thought 3 times in the past month of like, I could live in Portland right now. So it's on radar. It's definitely on the West Coast somewhere.
For sure. There's plenty of land here for you, and we will all support you. So no matter where it is, count us as part of your audience.
Yay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chasten. Thank you for all your wisdom and for your generosity to be here with us. And please keep us posted. Where can people follow you, find you, and keep up with the latest?
Follow me at Plush Armour, ARMOUR on Instagram. And you can follow, I have 2 accounts, Plush Armour and Chasten Harmon. I keep everything updated there. So you can also sign up for my newsletter if you want updates on what Plush wellness offerings are happening. We're about to launch a new workshop this weekend, and I'm really excited about the Empowered Body Workshop, about decolonizing the body and living full-bodied. So there's lots of cool stuff happening. So yeah, and I would love to stay in contact with all of you guys too, and what you've got going on. So if you feel compelled, please put your info in the chat so I can have it as well.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Chasten. We will definitely take your wisdom to heart and add it into our businesses and our lives. Game on.
I spit it cold like lyrically I'm a problem, that's when the show starts.